Welcome to episode 189 of the Disorganized Wizards Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined as always by Adam.
What's up?
And Cam.
How do you do?
We're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Well, that's the plan around here. If you want to get better at Limited, this is the episode to tune into, but there's a ton to talk about today. We're out here trying to help you.
We're still talking about tournaments and decks, just smaller decks and some larger tournaments.
To be fair, last week we mostly talked about stories, so
yeah, gotta make up for it.
Yeah,
now it balances out, you know?
Exactly. That's the whole idea. But to kick things off with the tournament, DWC Take Our Money this Saturday, July 18th, noon Eastern, $100 US, winner takes all. It's going to be a fun event. All three of us will be battling. Bounty prizes for anyone who takes us down in the event in the Swiss or top 8. Sign-ups are on MTG Melee now and in the show notes of this episode on whatever platform you're listening to it. So definitely check that out.
I have no idea what I want to play on Saturday. Do you guys have any idea?
Leaning towards blue-white.
I mean, yeah, that's the obvious pick, I think, for me, but I don't know. I might just play something different. I don't know. I'm probably going to play something fun. I'm going to play a bunch of games tomorrow and decide.
Maybe we should do the triple blue-white. That way, if someone really wants an arena code, they can bring a deck with a good blue-white matchup.
I mean, we did put out that blue-white guide on Twitter and Facebook. So if anyone has missed that, you can check us out on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1. You can see the deck guide we put up. Friend of the show, LP, has been doing pretty well in Mythic this month, and Adam wrote out a whole guide with him on the deck. The deck list is up there as well, of course. So check that out if you want to move away from the norm of Bant and Teamer Reclamation on ladder and win some games. Deck's a lot of fun. I was playing it actually a little bit the other day, and I really haven't touched ladder much at all this month. So,
yeah, the deck has a lot of game to it, and the guide is just more a general introduction to the strategy and how you should think about the deck and what the deck's role is in the current metagame, and just sort of how you can think about matches. It has some sideboard tips. I didn't give a direct sideboard guide, as all the players I talked to that are pretty proficient with the deck all agreed that you can't really give just simple numbers because the standard metagame is kind of weird for that right now. So just give some general guidelines for what cards you should think about taking out, what your role in each matchup is. So yeah, check it out if you're interested.
Cool. All right. Before we get into all the announcements that happened this past week, got to make sure to mention our sponsor, wizardtower.com. Check them out for all your Magic single needs. I think Jumpstart is live now for paper, so you can go buy those singles. M21 singles up, of course. And they've started up their events again. So if you want to play in weekly Magic events, wizardtower.com. All right. Kicking things off. We had the actual ban announcement this past week. Saw some shakeups in multiple formats, starting things off with the MTG Arena only format, Historic. Agent of Treachery, Winota, Fires of Invention moved from suspended to banned. Not really much to touch on there, so we'll just mention it.
Good riddance.
They got put in the timeout corner, and they were still, I guess, expected to misbehave.
Yeah, so they have to stay there for
the room.
Well, also, Nexus of Fate eating a ban at best of 3 Historic. It was currently banned in best of 1 Historic already, but its time had finally come. It turns out it had just been the most played deck in the entire format, was smashing everybody, so it was about time that card got axed. And then Burning Tree Emissary also got suspended, as Gruul Aggro was the second most played deck in the format, and WotC decided that cutting off the Gruul Aggro decks, I guess explosive starts, was the best way to go about keeping that deck around in the format so it's still playable, but, you know, cutting a lot of its power, I guess. So
I'm happy to see Burning Tree Emissary go just on principle.
Yeah, just a mana mechanic for you, Cam? Not a fan?
Yeah, it's gone. Nice.
Fair enough. Overall, I think the changes are totally fine. And yeah, I mean, we'll see where the format goes from here.
Yeah, it's still a new format. It's hard to really get upset when they change things. And also, nobody enjoys playing against Nexus.
Yeah, and I mean, the format got a huge shakeup today with Jumpstart getting added to Arena. So that's going to shake things up a lot. So who knows what will happen in Historic.
How excited are you to cast Thragtusk?
Oh, my God. completely forgot Thragtusk was in Jumpstart until about 30 minutes before we started recording. I just about lost my mind.
You can play just rock decks all the time. It's
Yeah,
awesome. You can just play Scavenging Ooze, Thragtusk for the rest of your life.
Can't wait. On Burial Rites Thragtusk? Holy moly.
Literally all I ever wanted to do.
Actually, Teferi Time Raveler Thragtusk? Oh my God.
I'm listening.
See, I don't know why they keep trying to design new sets and print new cards, and eventually they make a mistake and push the power level too high, and then they got to ban something and we got to talk about it. Like, Magic was perfect like 3 or 4 years ago. Just keep reprinting those cards in new ways with new art.
It's just, we found a good standard format. You just reprint those cards forever, and that's just standard. But that would suck. The fun of standard is it's new and changing.
Right, but
so
that's
I don't
probably
even
what
mind.
happened with like chess and checkers or shogi. Like, people were probably changing the game all the time, like inventing new pieces, and then finally everyone was like, whoa. 3 years ago, this game was great. Let's keep it. It's been that way for millennia.
All right. Perhaps the most, I guess, shocking ban/unban in this announcement was the Pioneer changes, where they did ban anything, but they unbanned Oath of Nissa, which was one of the first cards to get axed in Pioneer, and they're bringing it back. I honestly would not have guessed that we were going to see an unban in Pioneer. I think if anything was going to go, it was either going to be like Underworld Breach or something from Inverter. So this is a bit of a surprise.
I had no idea what was coming for these bans. Yeah, I was super curious. So I think a lot of people were really upset about this one too, right?
Yeah. Pioneer has really fallen in popularity over the past few weeks. The challenges on the weekend for Moto haven't been firing. There's like 200 players playing in leagues at any moment. It's really, fallen in popularity. And honestly, I don't think this change to the format is fixing Pioneer in any way and is not going to get people excited to jump back into the format at all.
Yeah, that's a tragedy because the format had a lot of steam and a lot of official support, but it seems to be struggling pretty badly right now.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems right now in Pioneer is just the complete lack of a good aggressive deck, which is weird to think about because I feel like the aggressive decks were, the best decks in the format for a very long time at the start. And things have completely changed with Breach and Inverter kind of taking things over. But honestly, if we were going to unban anything in Pioneer and actually have a major effect on the format, I think it had to be Smuggler's Copter. Bring those aggressive decks back into the format. I still am mad that they banned Copter at all. To start, I thought that card was totally reasonable in the format. And now here we are in a format that aggro decks just don't exist anymore and are not very good. Just give it back. Just give us back Copter. Everything will be fine.
I agree. I think Copter's fine. I think it would be a fine inclusion in the format. I don't see the issue. So yeah. I agree. I think those like early aggressive decks that people were complaining about, I just don't see the complaints. I just don't think they're reasonable complaints to be mad that a mono black deck with 1-drops and Copter is a good deck.
Yeah. Yeah. And with how the format looks now, with the decks that are popular, I honestly think that Copter just would be fine. I thought it was fine before, so maybe I'm just talking out my ass, but that's what I think.
I don't disagree, man. I think you're right. I think the management of the format hasn't been great. I don't know, but maybe they don't know. Maybe there's nothing they could have done as far as that goes.
Yeah,
I wonder if they're like just working off an incorrect picture of what they think people want the format to be, because it's an eternal format, and eternal formats are generally known, they're kind of introduced to newer players as like having these crazy combos in them because of this large card pool, and like they show them all these sweet combo decks and stuff, or like, look at this deck, it has no lands, and they show them Manaless Dredge, and everyone's like, wow, it's so crazy. Because they seem to be promoting like ramp strategies with unbanning Oath of Nissa. They mentioned in the article that some people are worried about the win rates of the combo decks like Breach and Inverter, but that Moto data doesn't match the perception. So they seem to kind of want to find reasons to leave these like combo-esque strategies in the format, even if people are not playing because of them.
Yeah. It's just weird because, like, I know recently they've been sticking to banning things when they reach what they feel is problematic win rates. But, like, if no one's playing your format, there's just an entirely different problem, right? It doesn't even matter if all the decks have reasonable win rates against each other, and you think that the metagames may continue to shift because there's other decks that see less play but are having success. Like, it just doesn't matter if people aren't excited to play the format, right? Like,
Maybe they're
Yeah.
going for like a no losses success. Like, they want everyone who plays to love it, and that will be the greatest format ever. If no one dislikes a format, good. You don't have to change anything. The 200 people, they love it.
yeah, I don't know. Pioneer, maybe the real problem is there's just no actual reason to play Pioneer right now. Like, it might be an entirely different story once we get super PTQs and PTQs back on Moto, which we'll touch on a little bit later in our next announcement. But I don't know. I guess time will tell once we get those events back, because really right now there just isn't any real incentive to be playing Pioneer. But I guess the same argument could be made for Modern too, and Modern still has a whole bunch more people playing it. So
Yeah, Modern has a lot of loyalty among its players, though. Modern's always been one of a really successful format in that regard.
Yeah. On that note, let's hop over to the Modern changes. So Arkham's Astrolabe got banned, which also means that regular basic lands have been unbanned in the format.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they made some pretty good points here in the article talking about why it got banned. That Astrolabe makes a trade-off of playing multiple colors in your deck a little too low. It's too low of a cost, so all these decks can have excellent mana, and it doesn't cost them a card. And it also has like multiple synergies from being a cheap artifact permanent that can be blinked for card advantage, etc. So I think we see a lot of these same problems in Legacy right now too, which they do mention.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Astrolabe was not a card I would have pinned when we saw it get spoiled for the first time as something problematic, but I guess across the year and a bit, it's really shown how insanely busted of an enabler this card is.
Yeah, I speculated on that card. I have like 50 copies.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I have 1 million. I bought a bunch of foils even. Yeah, it feels bad. I was right, but I was too right.
Yeah, you missed your opportunity to get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll just hold on to them for now. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future. I just didn't even think to get rid of them. But I mean, hopefully the legacy play thing is, who knows what's going to happen as far as, this card in the future. But I don't know. I'm okay with seeing it gone here, though.
Yeah. Banned in multiple formats. Arkham's Astrolabe.
Card is pretty nuts.
Who would have thought? I don't know. I haven't played Modern in a while. I think Modern was actually like not in a terrible spot before this banning too. So, which it like
how many times do we say this?
I'm listening to myself say that, and I just can't believe it. But I don't know. I don't feel like I can give a very accurate opinion on the state of the format before or after this ban, because it's just not a format I really keep up with or play much at all. I know you guys, I don't think you guys play the format at all, so.
Not anymore. I mean, I just don't. My passion for Modern is long gone. The reason I played before is there was competitive reasons to, but it feels like those don't even exist right now. And a lot of the format just was so miserable for me for a while in my gameplay that I haven't really gone back. It just hasn't felt worth it. But just because the matchups weren't enjoyable, and that format's been a problem for me for a long time.
Yeah. All right, and to wrap up the ban announcement, Expedition map Mystic Sanctuary got banned in Pauper. We don't really have to touch on that because it's Pauper.
Poor Pauper. It's such a fun format, though. Legitimately, it's super fun. Yeah. Just, not really that relevant, but it is really fun. And if listeners are interested, maybe I'll do a Pauper stream sometime. The games are super fun in Pauper, but yeah, it's just not really a relevant format.
Yeah, we've got a lot of talk about today, so we'll keep firing through all this stuff. The MTG Arena State of the Game came out the other day. We've got Jumpstart, which is live on Arena today, which is July 16th. You can only acquire the cards through either redeeming wild cards or playing in the Jumpstart limited event. I haven't actually played in the limited event yet. I don't know if you guys have, but
I've just been doing normal drafts.
Yeah, I guess you choose 2 themed packs and then you play with those packs. Like they get jammed together, kind of just how Jumpstart is meant to be played in paper. You just do it on Arena. And then, unfortunately, there is no protection for duplicates for cards that already exist in Arena. So you can open multiple versions of rares of cards that you had before, which is shitty.
Ooh, that's a rough one.
Yeah, I mean, this has just been a consistent problem on Arena, and which they've like half-assed addressed, I guess. But
yeah, what am I supposed to do with my 8 Temple of Silences? I can't put them all in a deck. It won't let me.
Well, see, you're not going to open them, though, until they're the last cards you need to open in M21. So that makes it okay, right, Cam?
But I keep opening them in drafts and stuff. I guess at drafts I can use them.
Yeah.
Still, I drafted 13 dual lands the other day in the same deck. It felt so good.
Like, I honestly don't understand why it's such a big issue to just say, okay, look, if you have more than 4 copies of this card because you own the card and across multiple sets, why can't we just redeem those cards for fucking wild cards? Pardon my French, but Jesus Christ, man.
Well, I mean, the answer's blindingly obvious, yeah.
Just let me read. I don't even let
they
me.
They just want money. I mean, yeah.
Just let me read. I'll even take 2. Let me cash in 2 extra copies of the card I have for 1 single wild card. Even that is fine. Like,
yeah, the Hearthstone build.
Yeah,
I guess it's more than that, isn't it? 4 or something. But even then, I would be happy if it was 4 extra or something. I don't know.
Yeah, let me redeem the whole extra set I have for 1 wild card. Even then, I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be sick. I don't know. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was something else.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, with the addition of Jumpstart, we had a whole bunch of new cards for Historic, so that format's getting a huge shakeup. And on the note of Historic, we also have the next Arena Open, which is Historic, which is on August 1st. So just like it is last time, day 1 is all best of 1, and you can rebuy as many times as you want. You can win up to $2,000 on day 2. All of the normal requirements are the same as the last time. But the big change for this event this time around is if you get 5 or more wins on day 2, it qualifies you for the Zendikar Rising Qualifier weekend, which before these qualifier weekends, you qualify by finishing top 1,200 on the Mythic ladder in either standard or constructed or limited. So there's new ways to qualify for the qualifier weekend through this event, which I guess is a nice little bonus on top of being able to win actual cash playing on MTG Arena. Again,
yeah, that's a huge benefit. Yeah, this is good.
I like that these events exist. Again, I don't know if I'll be able to play in it because I always work on weekends, but I think it is a very good thing that these events exist. So happy for that. Also, some smaller announcements like FNM at Home and Premier Draft, which we won't really talk about. The Core Set 2021 Festival of Time is happening, we had a similar thing last year before rotation happened, where you could play with only cards that were going to survive rotation, and you can get prizes from it. So I think that's a similar thing going on here. And we also got a developer roadmap, which is the big thing. Amonkhet Remastered. It's finally here, August 13th. We're going to get a bunch of cards from the Amonkhet block, added into Historic, and I think it's going to be introduced through a limited play experience, it says, so draft and sealed. That set.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun drafting and playing sealed during that time, so I'm cool with this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I really enjoyed that limited format, so definitely looking forward to that coming. And we also got a little mention of Pioneer Masters, and they've committed that it's coming by the end of this year. So it's just a digital-only product, which has a bunch of cards that are currently legal in Pioneer. So that'll get added into Historic. So they're not adding all of the cards legal in Pioneer at once. So I guess this is going to be broken up into multiple Pioneer Master sets until we finally get there.
All right, conspiracy theory here. They didn't ban any of the combo decks in Pioneer or change anything too drastically because they already were working on programming them into Pioneer Masters, and you can't just throw that word out.
Checks out.
Tinfoil hats on. Yeah.
Well, at least your 3-win conspiracy is safe here, Cam, now.
Yeah, so I've been ranting in our group chat for a couple days that over the prep time for this episode and our limited verses that we had yesterday, I was doing a bunch of drafts and I could not 3-0 a draft. I'd have like nuts decks that would stomp the first 2 matches and then just like comically flood 2 games in match 3 or something. So I was just developing a conspiracy theory that they have bot decks that they put you against after you get 2 wins that will automatically stomp you, just to try and get your gems.
I love how just dead serious you were about this too.
It made no sense. It's just like reasonable hands would just draw like 10 lands in a row. Maybe not that bad, but I lost a game. I got aggroed out on turn 5, and I had 4 lands in play, and I had 5 lands in my hand. I couldn't play them as fast as I was drawing them.
Okay, that does look bad.
And I'm aware that these are all outliers, but it was just so consistently 2-1, 2-1, 2-1.
I love that Scully tried to send you to the Arena Shuffler forum.
Oh yeah, and so I was
that thing is
losing my
gone
mind.
here.
And then just before this episode, finally had a reasonable mix of land and spells in my last few games, and my deck was nuts, and we got a 3-0. So it's possible. Still not sure if they're like just being kind to me once to continue to gaslight me. Give me a little bit of false evidence so that like they have an argument against my conspiracy, but we got that first 3-0 out of the way.
Congrats on your tournament.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Scully got a 3-0 when we were playing for the
I 3-0'd my
series instantly.
Yeah, I 3-0'd my first draft. Easy game.
I had 2-1 like 10 in a row.
You're a bot. Scully's one of the bots.
This shuffler just works for him.
Yep.
How many gems you pay for a new shuffler?
I don't want to talk about it. All right.
Dear Watsy, I am a content creator. I would like to show good games on stream. Please upgrade my shuffle.
Yeah. Playing limited this week, though, we skipped the last couple because formats were so weird and volatile and everything felt all over the place. But playing this Versus series as a limited episode was super fun. And I feel like we learned a lot and have a ton to talk about for a relatively newish limited format. I mean, playing in paper, it just came out.
Yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed this limited format so far, so we'll be touching on that in a bit, but we've got 2 more announcements to get to. Can you believe it?
They don't end.
So many announcements this past week. It's crazy. All right. We'll start with organized play. We finally have an idea of what, I guess, the Pro Tour is going to look like for the next little bit. And when I say what it's going to look like, I mean it just doesn't exist anymore, which I think everyone was kind of expecting. So, with each new set release, we're going to get a split championship, which is a tournament played on MTG Arena. So for the next one, it's the Zendikar Rising Championship. So to qualify for this tournament, you can qualify through the regular Arena qualifier weekends, which you can qualify for. Man, I'm just going to say qualify for a whole bunch of times here, which you can qualify for by finishing top 1200 on Mythic ladder and constructed or limited as normal. Just how you would the past year if you're trying to qualify for a Mythic championship. You can also qualify for the qualifier weekend by getting 5 wins or more in the Arena Open, which is coming on August 1st, like we mentioned a little while ago. So beyond that, you can also qualify for the split championship if you're in the MPL or Rivals, of course. Or if you won a super qualifier or a split championship qualifier, championship showcase event on Magic Online, or if you had a top finish at the Players Tour final or a Mythic Invitational, which is happening, I think, in like 8 days. And then the Mythic Invitational is some point within the next month, I believe. So multiple ways to qualify for this event. Not really
The usual way, though, like for someone who's not really on the train at all or in the system at all, it's just grind out into Mythic and then spike a qualifier weekend that you get access to from being in high Mythic, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. You have to spike the qualifier weekend, or you have to win a PTQ on Magic Online. So
fair enough.
Pretty much the same as you would have to do if you were qualifying for a regular Pro Tour. The event has a $250,000 prize pool. And one of the big things is the four top finishing challengers earn invitation to the 2020/2021 Rivals Gauntlet, which we'll get to in the next announcement. So if you can spike this event, it basically sets you up for a Rivals run. Or I think it guarantees you Rivals. We'll get into it. So this is basically what the Pro Tour is going to look like for the next bit while we're still dealing with COVID. They're going to be arena championships. You can qualify for them through arena or on Magic Online. And this is kind of what we have for the time being. So
have they said it's a temporary system that they're going to revert once things...
they didn't say anything about reverting or anything like that. Okay. But this is just kind of...
They make so many changes that it would be kind of nice if they use this as an opportunity to sort out their online play and then leave it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll see. I feel like this is just the cobbled together solution they have, because you need some sort of OP to exist for people to be excited about your product. So this is what we have for the next time being.
Yeah, I feel like right now with the way things are in organized play, though, like if you're trying to sneak in a Pro Tour just to play one, it's not a bad time right now, actually. Like, you know, if you just want to qualify from home, but it lacks the same sort of drive that people had before, I think.
Yeah. The problem is, like, there's no reward for, like, consistent performance, which we're going to get to as we hop right into the overview for the 2020/2021 MPL and Rivals League structure. So, quick overview of this announcement. We finally are back to in-league play. We had MPL, like, what were they called before when the MPL first started? They played in, like, weekend mini-series events.
I can't remember what they were called, but I know I remember what you're talking about. It wasn't originally, like, Bueller started them back or before that even started, and then they just, like, it was a continuation of Super League. It's just that they attached all the Rivals thing to it afterwards and stuff. Yeah, it's all like part of that.
The original
system.
Like MPL in league play was so they could get like a bye to day 2 of the next Mythic Championship, right? That was the format.
I believe so, but it's changed so many times. It's so hard to keep up with what's going on.
After that never really popped off. They didn't get much viewership on the weekends, so they stopped doing that. And there was just no in-league play for MPL and Rivals at all. The only time the players got to compete against each other were in, like, you know, the Magic Fest onlines or in the Pro Tours or whatever. So now they're finally introducing in-league play, which I think this is one of the best things from this announcement for MPL and Rivals League. So the players are going to be playing in 7 total league weekends, which through playing in these events, they'll earn points for their league standings within their respective leagues. And how you place in those league standings have a big impact on if you requalify for the MPL or requalify for Rivals, and how you kind of stand in that. So these league weekends there'll be coverage of it, but This was the big thing I think the MPL and Rivals was missing, was there was no like direct competition with each other to keep themselves in their respective leagues. And it really just didn't feel like much of like an actual pro league at all without this actual interleague play. I don't know if you guys felt the same, but I think that was one thing that was really missing from like the upper echelon of Magic, was there was just no actual direct play against each other.
Yeah, they tried for the weekly structures, but the way it lines up is also awkward in Magic.
I didn't even realize that was what they were going for. I thought it was just like a VIP list to hang out backstage with WotC at tournaments.
Well, you're right. You're joking, but like that's actually kind of what it was. Like there was no actual competition directly with each other, and like you can't really. It's really hard to create excitement around your league when the actual league doesn't exist.
Doesn't have any competition.
Yeah, there's no actual competition within a league.
Yeah.
Like you call it a league, but it's not a league. It's just a group of players that you call pros, but they don't actually compete directly against each other. But
yeah.
Now we have
I guess
that.
It would be nice to have some narratives be generated, to have some people actively working on competitive versions of formats. Maybe we'll get some more data on how standard metas shake up, something like this.
Yeah, and like this actually is actually relevant because like the top 4 players from the MPL and the top 4 players in Rivals directly from these league weekend standings requalify them for MPL. And if you top 4 the Rivals League, you qualify for MPL. So like there's actual stakes. It matters for staying in their respective leagues and moving up or getting dropped down. So it's relevant. Like I like this a lot because now whether they stay in their league is no longer tied to their performance at pro tours across the year. And I actually think for these leagues specifically, it's much better to have whether they stay in the league directly linked to how they perform against other players directly in their league, not how they perform against the players outside of it. You know, am I explaining this well? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you don't just want the people good at stomping everybody, but like you want the best among the good players.
Exactly. So with the introduction of the league weekends, you have the league standings like I talked about. There's also now the league standings kind of tie into the MPL and Rivals Gauntlet, which are these new events that shape how the MPL/Rivals will look for the next year. So starting with the MPL Gauntlet, you have the players in the MPL who finished 5th through 12 across the league weekends play in the Gauntlet, as well as the Rivals League players who finished 5 through 20. So this is a 24-player tournament. And then from that, the top 4 players of this event, plus the 4 highest finishing rivals, join the MPL. And then the remaining 16 players from this event drop down to Rivals League. So it's a nice kind of like end of season event to see who makes the MPL and who gets relegated down to Rivals.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't even know how I feel. I feel like the old system was better when there was like worlds and everything, because it gave other people a reason to care. Like, I hate to say this, but like as a spectator, man, like I don't care who gets relegated to Rivals. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like there
at least okay. To be fair, I also didn't care about like nationalism or anything that a lot of people like got stoked about with Worlds, but like I get it, you know, and like you root for a team and stuff, and like I used to know like some of the players. I know we all would like we would know the Canadian team, and like we'd know some of the American team, and that's pretty cool. And I miss like those tournaments, I guess, but like, and I miss Pro Tours for the weight of them. But lately, like I don't know, like maybe it's intra-league play will help.
Yeah, like I totally agree with what you're saying. That hey, I don't really care about MPL or Rivals right now, but I think that's feeling that way is because of how these leagues have been handled so far. Like the players aren't really marketed that well. There's no competition against each other. Like I feel like starting now with these leagues and having these interleague play is a step in the right direction for making people like you and me actually care about it and follow the stories.
You have to make it like esports. If they're going to talk esports all the time, they need to actually make it a real league with real competition.
Yeah, you want to have players that you root for, right? And
I feel like league weekends where you earn points that you take throughout the season that eventually matters, there's like a tournament at the end that actually matters, is like too slow for the esport viewers' attention span.
Well, no, it's kind of
I might
like
watch the last tournament, but I don't know if I'm going to watch all these like league play. Like,
well,
I'm
yeah,
comparing
but
it
that's the thing though. This is basically just regular season / playoffs. The gauntlets are playoffs, and then the league weekends are your regular season. So it's like the same structure as like most sports and other esports.
Yeah, I just want to compare it to like other esport leagues. Like I watch the GSL, the Global StarCraft League, and every match that they broadcast, like someone's getting eliminated like that day. Like you watch a day and like 2 of the 4 people that play like get eliminated. And so like every time they broadcast something, I watch with curiosity to like see what people are playing in the game, but also like who gets eliminated. There's like a sense of progression of the league other than just this last tournament.
Yeah, this is more of a comparison to like regular sports and like something like the LCS. You know, you have your regular season, you have your playoffs, and then the teams that do well qualify for Worlds or qualify for their higher league. I also think that having the league play out like this, for Magic specifically, a game with so much variance is really important, comparing it to, you know, like you were saying, Cam, with the StarCraft League where, you know, someone gets eliminated every week. So it makes it a little bit more exciting. But I think that's totally okay for a game like StarCraft where most of the time the better player wins. It's as similar to chess, right? Where the majority of the time the more skilled player wins the game. And that's just not always true with Magic. So a system like this where it's based on the performance across 7 league weekends rather than just elimination every single week is a much better way to handle a game with variance. So, which is what I was kind of alluding to earlier in the podcast. You want performance to be measured across a long period of time and multiple weekends to make up for the variance that Magic automatically has, you know? I think basing these things on who can spike weekend to weekend is actually a very poor way to manage MPL and Rivals.
Yeah, I think the problem WotC's having is honestly just like size, location, like there's a whole bunch of problems. And like the amount of work I think they would need to fix it is astronomical. As far as running like competitive tournaments right now, like it feels like organized play is having a really hard time sort of figuring out what it is people want from watching and experiencing Magic. So yeah, maybe this is something people want. I just want them to produce something that has high viewership. Like I watched the recent MCs and there's like 5,000 or 10,000 viewers, whereas Pro Tours like 3 years ago had like 80,000 to, you know what I mean?
Did they?
Yeah, there were Pro Tours with like 60, 70,000 people watching for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I do
at least like 40 in the 40s, but now it feels like I think that was the biggest one. Those were the biggest ones though, but now OP just feels like the constant changes have made everything feel strange.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I'm whatever about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that OP is a huge shit show, and it has kind of been for the past 2 years. But I do really like the idea of introducing this like regular season for Rivals and MPL with the playoffs at the end. And I really like this structure for making me care about actually watching it.
Yeah, we'll see how they advertise it. If they can find a really good way to advertise and push it, it could be good.
Yeah, so that was the MPL Gauntlet, which you talked about. There's also the Rivals Gauntlet, and this tournament is another 24-player tournament, so it's the end-of-year playoffs, essentially. You have rank 21 through 32 from the Rivals League jumping into this event, and you also have the 12 challengers, which are the 4 highest finishers from each split championship across the season. So you basically have to spike... you don't have to win, but you have to be one of the 4 highest placing people who aren't already in the MPL or Rivals at one of the split championships, and this qualifies you for the Rivals Gauntlet. That being said, though, if you place well as a challenger in one of the set championships, you have a direct line to the MPL, and placing well in one of those events automatically queues you for Rivals, because by qualifying by itself for the Rivals Gauntlet, the worst you can do is finish bottom 16, and that puts you into the Rivals League. So if you bottom 16 this event, you make Rivals, and then the top 4 from this event and the 4 highest finishing challengers join the MPL. So like that's a pretty good line to the MPL as a challenger. Like, you don't necessarily even have to top 4 this event. You just have to be within one of the 4 highest finishing challengers to join right to the MPL. Obviously, like 12 players from split championships isn't a lot of players with how many people play competitive Magic, but
yeah, still there's a live chance that you could make MPL and play and stuff, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, like I agree it's sweet. The biggest problem again though is like now we're rewarding players for spiking events rather than rewarding for consistent performance, which was the case before, and I still think is the best way to handle organized play for Magic, a game with variance, right? Like, you don't always have the best players winning every single tournament. You want to reward players for doing consistently well across, a period of multiple tournaments, not just for spiking one.
Yeah.
I truly think that is the best way to handle it. So, like, obviously this format doesn't reward that, but that being said, for those players who do spike the tournaments, I do think this structure that they're joining is actively very good.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't know. My faith in like organized play is just literally gone. Like, I just don't even care. Like, I'm having a really hard time like caring about MPL or trusting them to handle organized play at all. Like, I just assume that we're in the darkest timeline imaginable for everything that WotC does as far as organized competitive play, given the last couple of years. And obviously, like, that in combination with the fact that paper events have been just demolished. But yeah, we'll see if this fixes things. I don't know. Like, maybe it's just like an entrenched player problem that I just like don't like take their competitive. I wish I did, because I used to really take it seriously. But just the constant changes, the gutting of pros, the amount of it's hard to. Yeah, but I mean, I'd never turn down an MPL spot if I win it. But
yeah, and then to beyond the regular season / playoffs for MPL and Rivals, there's also how to qualify for the World Championship. So you have last year's World Champion, you have top 4 MPL players from the season, you have the top 4 Rivals players from the season, you have the winner of the MPL Gauntlet, the top 2 from the Rivals Gauntlet, and the 4 highest finishing challengers from the Rivals Gauntlet. So it's actually, if you are one of those challengers, you have a very good chance of making Worlds in your first year, which is pretty incredible.
I'm looking forward to all these big tournaments being filled with like completely random players that no one's heard of before. All the old MPL like just gets shunted out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, it'd be hilarious. I mean, it'd be like a bunch of random people though. Apollo probably.
Yeah.
So really, across the entire season, for people joining and dropping out, 12 players join, 12 players get dropped out, and that's the fluctuation in the players across Rivals and MPL. So not a huge churn for in and out, but moving between Rivals and MPL, there actually is a decent amount of churn. I like the idea of it, and I really hope they don't screw it up. That being said, the track record here is not great. But I really think how they have set up the gauntlets and the league weekends, I think you have a basic structure here which can work pretty well for legitimizing yourself as an actual esport, getting teams interested in sponsoring players because you have this direct play. It's every weekend. There's a regular season, there's the playoffs, etc. I think this is definitely a step in that right direction, but I'm skeptical. And that's where I'll leave it.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
All right, and that wraps up all of the announcements we had this past week. Let's talk about something fun like Limited.
Why'd they wait so long to announce so many things?
Dude, they're flying by the seat of their pants. That's really what it is.
Yeah. That's why I'm not trying to be really doom and gloom about everything. Like, my inner doomer wants to do it, but I don't know, like as bad as all the bans were and as bad as things have been for organized and competitive play over the last couple of years, just banning's becoming a normal thing. I don't know. I'm just hoping it's just the weird state of the world or something and things will get better. Just hoping I can come back to a reasonable, normal meta game of Magic. We'll see.
Mhm.
But at least in a glorious sort of display of stability and normalcy, core limited has been pretty enjoyable.
Yeah,
It's a format that I don't think has ever suffered from a ban. Has
Not
anything
that I
ever
can
been
recall.
banned in limited?
Oh yeah, I think. No, not limited. Sorry, I was going to say for some reason I thought you were going to say block. Yeah, block.
Oh.
I don't know about limited. Probably not.
Yeah, perfect format. Always nothing wrong with it. No bans needed. And M21 is a good example of it. Yeah, I've been having a bunch of fun drafting it.
Yeah, we're just going to spend some time talking about some of the major archetypes, some of the important cards that you should be looking for, some of the first pickable uncommons, maybe even some of the first pickable commons.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll spend some time talking about the cards that really impressed us, and then we'll just go through the archetypes, talk about the cards you should be looking for. For those of you who maybe have some draft tokens still lurking around from your pre-order or anything on Arena, or you want to play online, or you want to go down to Wizard Tower here in Ottawa if you're a local, or wherever your LGS is, can you safely and all that, whatever. Just depends on where you are and all that. If you want to play some drafts, this should be a good overview or guide for how the format shakes out. I think we've played a ton between us. We've played dozens and dozens and dozens of drafts and sealeds. We feel pretty comfortable about it.
You could do a safe, socially distant draft with gloves and stuff at a sushi restaurant, one of those ones that's got a belt. You just put the packs on it and they go right.
That's actually
the belt.
That's a good idea.
But yeah, so I think the last really in-depth limited episode we did was for what was that format?
Was it Throne of Eldraine?
Maybe it was Throne. One of the Ravnica sets where we did like a really in-depth, like here are the archetypes and sort of how the format plays out. And there I think I said the slogan was Death Touch versus green creatures. And so similarly, I've kind of, at least to myself, found a slogan that I think describes M21 limited, which is rarity disparity. There are a lot of cards that perform outside of the rarity that they're printed at. And I think like being able to draft the format well and being able to come up with good decks is just identifying these cards as like a baseline.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there are a heap of just absolutely busted commons that basically outperform commons, mind you. There are commons that will outperform rares in this format pretty handily. The power level on some of the commons is incredibly high, as well as the uncommons, in relation to the other bombs that you would expect normally. So yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, like it's still a limited format. There's still some like incredibly strong rares. Your general uncommon is still powerful. But I guess to really show the poster children of this slogan, the commons that I think are uncommon power level, bordering on rare power level, like I would take them over most other cards in packs, are things like Roaming Ghostlight, the 5-mana 3/2 that bounces something and it flies. That card has killed me or set me behind so far that I die a few turns later, like so often. That card's nuts. Basri's Acolyte is just so much power if you have any sort of a board presence to put the extra 2 counters on. Llanowar Visionary ramps and draws a card and is not a terrible body for 3 mana. Like that thing's messed up. Goblin Wizardry can like single-handedly carry blue-red decks. It just provides like flash blockers can be powerful, and that's the weakest thing it does. Oftentimes they attack for 6 or more the next turn. Cards like Pride Malkin, just in their flexibility and their synergy with other cards, hold together tons of archetypes. Grasp of Darkness is at common, and it kills 90% of the format for 2 mana at instant speed. I am hard-pressed to pass a Grasp of Darkness. Stelly really likes Truffle Snout.
Yeah, I don't know if Trustful Snout is on par with all of these other cards you've listed, but he's just such a good
definitely the
low
weakest
boy.
one on this list. But again, the flexibility, like it synergizes with the cards that care about you gaining life. It's just a 3-mana 3/3, which is relatively big in the format for that mana cost. The fact that it when it is a 3/3, it gets a counter. So if you have anything that cares about counters, that like helps that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I've said this before. We need to petition Truffle Snout to be an arena pet. I need that.
Yeah.
I need that in
It's
my
just-
life.
it'd be a good one.
Just so cute, yeah.
But yeah, I guess just to really hammer home like how good these commons are, a mistake I was making early in the format when I was drafting, which led to a lot of these 2/1s, is that I would see these cards and I would know that they're good, but it would still be sort of early in the pack and there'd be some uncommon. And I just sort of assumed that you should take the good uncommons in your archetype first because they're less likely to wield, you're less likely to see them, etc. And so I was taking things like Falconer Adept instead of Basri's Acolyte. And I've since stopped. I now take the cards on this list over most things. And yeah, they justify it. Like Basri's Acolyte is so much better than things like Falconer's Adept.
There was a draft the other day where we watched the draft I did when I played. I stayed open in pack 1, but I second picked Ghostlight, Roman Ghostlight. I second picked it, over, I think, a rare was in the pack. I can't remember what else, but I second picked Ghostlight. I didn't even end up playing blue. And I think I had the chance to pick up a second one. And I paused for quite a while in that pack, debating whether I could swap to blue because that's how powerful these cards are at common.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, these are cards that just you want almost as many as you can get, and they go in basically any deck of their color. Other cards which sort of perform above their rarity level, some really powerful uncommons that we have listed here. Things like Shipwreck Dowser is just, it's got prowess, it buys back a spell, it's got, as a 3/3, it's probably a 4/4 because of prowess, so it outsizes most things on the board. That's kind of what I've noticed in that format. Outside of some exceptionally large creatures, most things are a 4/4 or smaller, which is why Grasp is so good. Some other standout cards here. Teferi's Tutelage will just kill your opponents if you play it on turn 3. So that card is definitely rare or mythic power level in this format.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever beaten it if it's come down on turn 3.
Yeah, it's so fast. There's so many other cards that will let you loot or draw cards that it just triggers a ton. Yeah. Things like, there's some really good removal at uncommon. Things like Faith Fetters just gets a creature out of the way.
Faith
life link.
Sure, yeah, but Faith Fetters, the reason I think it's such a good first pick if your rare isn't great is that it's it can target anything. It shuts off abilities. It gains life. So the gain 3 cards in your deck are online.
Mm-hmm.
Silver Smoke Ghoul or whatever is actually super good and limited if you can trigger it ever. It's just an unbelievable advantage. I had a sealed deck where I had 3 of them. And it was, I think Stally was in that one. And it was insane if they ever came back. So yeah, it does a lot of work. Fate's Fetters in the black-white life gain archetype kind of thing. But it's also just that it's not like Eliminate where Eliminate's only killing converted mana cost 3 or less. Fate's Fetters just so powerful for a removal spell. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just ranting about it because it's so obnoxious.
Yeah. Yeah, Fate's Fetters is insane. Another card that I actually didn't believe had the text on it that it does when I first read it is Warden of the Woods. This is a 6-mana 5/7 with Vigilance. And if they target it in any way, spell or ability, they just get to draw 2.
This is not an uncommon for 6 mana and green.
Yeah, this thing is just you basically have to trade with it in combat, or you're giving them cards and they'll just bury you in card advantage. But it's 5/7. So if they've done anything else, you probably won't be able to. If you play this and you're even with your opponent, you'll probably end up winning that game. It's so powerful.
Yeah, it's a mythic.
But it's
a mythic uncommon.
Some other things that are just very good, like archetype enablers, Heartfire Immolator. I think the blue-red deck, outside of its Goblin Wizardies, really requires early prowess creatures, and Heartfire Immolator is arguably one of the best ones, a prowess creature that functions as a removal spell if needed. Liliana's Devotee, I was really impressed with, just the fact that you can navigate the game in such a way that you're able to get these death triggers consistently. And so it's just sort of an army in a can. You just make zombies until you've won the board. Your opponent is put into the bad position of taking damage or blocking. But if they block, you just remake the zombie because it died. So this card's incredibly hard to deal with it once it starts snowballing. And I've kind of noticed that there's not that many really snowbally cards because there's not a lot of mana sinks. Like nothing really runs away with the game on its own, but Liliana's Devotee might be one of those. Seasoned Hollowblade, another 2-drop, potentially worth first picking.
Yeah, I think your pack's got to be pretty weak probably, but it's still good.
Your pack's got to be kind of weak, but I think it uniquely enables strategies playing things like Dub or a lot of these enchantments, just trying to grow a creature. The fact that it has built-in protection allows you to more safely put enchantments on it. So if you want to play a sort of Boggles type strategy and you see one of these relatively early in a pack, you could consider it. It's still weak to things like Grasp of Darkness, but maybe they don't have it. Against a lot of colors, this could just start bashing them.
For sure. Seen it happen too a few times.
Yeah. And then Tide Skimmer is just another insane card. You just have to attack, and it draws cards.
I had such an insane blue-white deck. It was unreal. I had double Tide Skimmer, double Swift Response, so like the big things on the ground I could just kill when they attacked. And I had a game where I curved Watcher, the blue-white flyer, the 2/2 that discounts flyers. I just curved Watcher into Tide Skimmer. Yeah, the game was really easy. I was on the play. It was just and then Tide Skimmer just buried them in card advantage. Tide Skimmer is super good. It's really easy. That's with the caveat though that blue-white flyers I think is one of the stronger archetypes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I like the blue and white, and maybe I was gonna say I'm not sure which colors. I mean, all the colors have actually been pretty solid now that I think about it, but I do think blue-white is one of the stronger archetypes, and Tide Skimmer sets you up very well to go into it. And then the last thing on this list, Core Set Limited usually has these. Actually, most limited sets have had them recently, but the cycle of 2-color uncommons that each sort of point in the direction of those color pairs, or that color pair's archetype, they're all quite good. And they're all, if you see them early enough in a pack, reasons to try and go into that archetype.
Yeah, I think the most powerful is the Mentor, Conclave Mentor.
Yeah, that incredibly rewards green-white cards. If you have a Conclave Mentor, then like picking Truffle Snouts early makes sense.
Yeah, and also it just makes Basri's Acolyte, which is already just a bomb common, just absolutely unbelievable. One of my drafts I lost in game 3 of match 3 for the 3-0 was in game 3. I played turn 2 Igneous Cur, turn 3, I don't know, some 3-drop, turn 4 Basri's Acolyte, and I lost very easily, even though I was on the play, because my opponent played turn 2 Conclave Mentor, turn 3 Truffle Snout, turn 4 Basri's Acolyte.
That's like 5/6s.
But they're starting on the Conclave Mentor was the end of the game. Also, Stelly and I streaming one day, I think you were there too. We put that to work as well. The counters deck is really strong for the Conclave Mentor, but a lot of the uncommons enable exactly like you said the archetypes. So yeah, be mindful if your rare isn't that good. If there's one of the 2-color uncommons there, maybe you can keep that in mind and try and go into some of the archetypes. I guess we'll probably spend some time talking about.
So yeah, I guess as we mentioned, the 2-color uncommons point towards the archetypes. We can just go through what those are now and some thoughts on them. In no particular order, I just listed them out as I thought of them. Red-black. I tried to draft a red-black deck once, and the archetype seems to be sort of an aggressive deck with sacrifice themes. This is commonly a red-black archetype in limited sets, but it's the threatens plus sack outlets. So you say take your opponent's stuff with cards like Treacherous Greed or Traitorous Greed, and then you sack it to either Direfleet Warmonger is maybe one of the best. Hobble Fiend is pretty good, but maybe you're playing something like Witch's Cauldron. Just some way to take their creatures and then get in combat and sack them as a form of removal. I wasn't quite able to make this work, and I haven't played against it online much where it's been very impressive. And I think it's just because a lot of the sack outlets you might feel pressured to play aren't creatures, which then make it hard to play an aggressive plan. Do you have any thoughts about this one, Adam?
Yeah, I don't know. The problem I have with the sack specifically is the threaten effect is an uncommon. And then the sack effects, unless it's the black-red 3-drop, are all also non-creatures instead of creatures. Historically, when black-red sack decks in limited, I think, are good, it's because the sack outlet is tacked onto creatures, whereas here I think you need to use things like Village Rites and Witch's Cauldron, which don't leave you with enough in the board, and then you're just left with these sort of like, if you don't draw the threaten, you just have a bunch of useless cards. You don't have enough creatures. I'm not a fan of it, but you can draft. You can get it. You just have to get really lucky.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's what I've noticed is that unlike maybe other times where this deck has existed, it feels like it doesn't want to sack anything that it hasn't stolen. It doesn't have like some source of 1/1s to power its engine when it doesn't have Traitorous Greed. So maybe it's out there. Maybe there's a different take on red-black other than the sacrifice themes. Maybe there's just sort of a sub-theme and we're missing the bigger one. If you've had successful red-black decks, let us know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it. I've mostly played every other color quite a bit, although not as much blue-black as you. I know you played a ton of blue-black.
I played a bunch of blue-black because I can't pass a Roaming Ghostlight, and I also can barely pass a Grasp of Darkness, so that's just where I end up. And the blue-black decks that I've drafted are generally just reanimate decks. Those are the best ones that I've had, playing the huge blue creatures in like Tolarian Kraken or Spined Megalodon. If you can get a Gormand, it's amazing. But to me, it's the reanimate deck. You have things like Obsessive Stitcher and Teferi's Protege to loot, to get those cards into your graveyard. And then you just want to pick up the Rise Agains. You have removal to bridge the early game, and then you reanimate something huge and go from there.
Yeah, and Rise Agains are also generally, I've noticed, pretty easy to pick up. And the blue-black deck to me seems pretty open a lot. And black's pretty deep, and I feel like it's not a very heavily drafted color. So if you're looking to go into it, blue-black's pretty fun, actually. I think it's usually pretty open.
Yeah, I've had fun and success with blue-black. And it's a deck that supports things like Teferi's Tutelage very well if you're lucky enough to get one, because the loot effects keep triggering it. So I've enjoyed blue-black.
Yeah, definitely. One of the next decks we're going to talk about too is the green-black pairing, which also can have a reanimator theme. Not always, but you can bring back, your big creatures should they die to the numerous amounts of spot removal, or you can maybe Village Rites them if they get Capture Sphered. Bringing back things is from as simple as, Colossal Dreadmaw or Gormand, which is the dream, to like Gloomsower, or you can play the sort of like morbid, the mechanic morbid, it's like horrible deck where if something dies, you get effects. This was the deck that Stelly just threw out his first draft deck for the Versus series very easily with.
Yeah, deck was good.
Yeah, just the creature, usually the green decks is just that your creatures are really threatening. They're very powerful, they're beefy. Even as something as cute as Truffles. Now, 3-mana 3/3s are pretty big in Core Set Limited. You have things like Sabretooth Mauler, which get really, really out of hand. These are the sort of morbid, right? If something died this turn. The key cards you could take in this are like, Twin Blade Assassins, things like this, which Stelly had in his deck. And the one time I think you said you drew it, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was very, very good. But yeah, another good card in this archetype is Sabretooth Mauler. That card has been pretty good every time I've cast it. I really like that one.
Yeah, that's a card you can play both in the green-white counter stack and the green-black morbid deck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think a card that isn't amazing but is sometimes fine, which really sort of summarizes or demonstrates kind of how the green-black deck operates, is something like Caged Zombie, where it has this, if something died this turn, you can pay 2 and your opponent loses 2 life. And at first I was overestimating this card, and I had it in like blue-black decks. And I often found that my early game creatures weren't big enough. And because I was playing Cage Zombies, they also weren't big enough that like I was kind of just falling behind on board. And so often like I didn't have time to activate it. But in green-black, you have green creatures that are large enough that when you attack with them, your opponent either takes a bunch of damage, and that's fine, or they have to trade. Like your creatures will trade in combat because they're sizable enough. And that's what really powers up these if something died this turn. You're able to sort of just trigger it incidentally by attacking with green creatures alongside your black removal. So Cage Zombie is good for a deck like this that might not have a lot of reach because you don't have things with flying or maybe not a lot of trample.
Yeah, that sounds about right for green-black. Yeah. And green-black can be pretty grindy. I guess the next deck we're going to talk about can also be really grindy. It's something I haven't played a ton of, which is shocking because generally in core set and generally in grindy limited formats, this is one of my favorite color pairs, which is the white-black, sort of just grindy life gain. If you first pick a veto.
Yeah, if you pick Veto, what is his name? Thorn of the Dusk Rose, you can almost certainly just go all in on white-black. The uncommon is Indulging Patrician, which domes your opponent for 3 if you've gained 3 or more life. But this is the deck where things like Silver Smoke Ghoul really shines. Face Fetters is amazing here because it synergizes with all your lifelink stuff. And yeah, you just get access to arguably the best removal in the format between white and black, and then you just try and grind out the game with these lifelink triggers. As far as commons that are good in this archetype, Blood Glutton, I think, isn't quite good enough to earn a home in most places, but just having lifelink allows it to play well with tons of cards in this archetype. Sanguine Indulgence is an important one here. Sanguine Indulgence, I think, if you need some card draw, is playable in any black deck, but it really shines when you can discount it in white-black and get back some of the creatures that you've traded to play this grindy game. Yeah, I think that's about it. Just a grindy white-black.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add on it. I mean, it's sort of what you would expect. Yeah, you want to pick up the ghouls, weird gain 3 cards. You'll even play Revitalize and not be too upset about it, which is weird. The return 2 creatures, if you've gained 3, it costs less. The card's super good in this archetype. You just want to bring back creatures. This is the kind of deck where you want Fetid Imp, things like this. And you just want to rebuy your creatures, replay removal spells, just slowly get them. One of the best cards you can pick up here, and I would first pick it actually. This is another first, maybe if you want to go black-white. If your pack's really weak, is actually the Black Shrine. I think that card's so good.
Yeah, I've lost to turn 2 Black Shrine into turn 3 any other shrine because you're just losing 2 and they're gaining 2 every turn, and that's hard to race if they do anything else.
Yeah, and the White Shrine is actually really good if you have both the black and the White Shrine. That the White Shrine taps creatures. I mean, yeah, sure, it costs 5 or whatever, but I mean that's still a really powerful effect to tap creatures down in limited. Anything that can do that. Any mana sink. There aren't a lot of mana sinks, and that White Shrine is one of them. And the Black Shrine will just also end the game. I think that card's a much higher pick than people realize.
Yeah. And I guess before we move off the black decks, a card that plays well in all of these archetypes, but I think sometimes doesn't quite make the cut. But if you happen to pick one up, is sometimes sort of the last piece you need, is Crypt Lurker. It's actually incredibly flexible. As a 3/4 for 4 mana, it's a reasonable size. It's a sack outlet that is a creature, which is what Adam was saying red-black needs. It's a discard outlet for blue-black. It's a sack outlet for maybe something small in green-black to get your if something dies triggered. And in white-black, like, it can just cycle away your small creatures if you're looking for removal spells, or you can always just, in any deck, sack something that's under enchantment removal.
Yeah, there are ways to use that card where it's a lot better than it appears at initial face value, I think, as well. Yeah, I agree for sure.
Yeah.
And you'll notice mostly when we talk about decks, we're talking about commons and uncommons that you can pick up. I'm not going to tell you Terror of the Peaks is good.
Yeah.
Although,
the rares and stuff are pretty straightforward on which ones are good. But at the end, after all of this, there's some that I've been underwhelmed by that we'll touch on.
Yeah. All right. So one of the decks we can touch on that isn't as a sort of leaning on crash throughs and riddle forms as I've noticed the older builds of this deck have, just because it doesn't have the amount of cheap spells, it feels like, or at least too many people maybe are going for it in draft, is blue-red spells. But obviously, if you can get an early riddle form, this deck is looking exactly for the spells like this. But Spellgorge are weird. The Dowser, Goblin Wizardry, the Immolator, all these cards are just key blue-red spells cards. But the deck can play a little slower than I think it historically has.
Yeah, it's not as explosive, although it can have those explosive starts. But really, like, if you can pick up Goblin Wizardries and as many as you can, it's really, I feel, the key card in this deck because it's a non-creature spell that makes prowess creatures. Really, I think this archetype just lives and dies by its early prowess creatures. Things like Immolator, as Adam mentioned, but even things like Jeskai Elder are incredibly powerful in this deck. Spellgorge are weird, having pseudo prowess, or actually better than prowess, it just gets bigger always, is also really important. And this deck can just have like a bunch of damage come out of nowhere by like end step Goblin Wizardry, and then just casting, Ops and Frantic Inventory, what have you. And I think this is one of the decks where the uncommon card might be more important for blue-red than it is in other archetypes, because the blue-red uncommon, it makes a token that's an XX, where X is the number of instant sorceries in your graveyard, and then you bring an instant sorcery back. It lets you play more heavily into a bunch of spells. Like, you get to play like Ops and Crash Throughs and have a deck that doesn't have many creatures, and that then powers up this uncommon.
You're talking about Experimental Overload, right?
Yes, Experimental Overlord.
Yeah, that card's unbelievable.
Because if you don't have that card, you can find yourself in games where you're just cycling Ops and Crash Throughs, and by the time you find your creatures, it's a bit late because they're small without those spells that you had to cast to find them.
But you want to prioritize like Shocks, Crash Throughs, and Ops, when you have Experimental Overload. But if you don't get that card, it's not a big deal, and you can play like a bigger...
Yeah, if you don't get those cards, that card, then you can play a bigger blue-red, probably focusing more on the removal spells, things like Capture Sphere, or Shock, Scorching Dragonfire, Turn to Slag, playing towards a bigger creatures. You might even have like a Spined Megalodon, maybe some counter spells, but just the prowess creatures from blue-red is pretty good. You might play more of a Flyers game plan, like Mistral Singer is very good in this deck. That's not so quick, but maybe you're playing like Mistral Singer and Tide Skimmer and just attacking in the air while controlling the board with removal. But however you get it, I think blue-red is one of the best archetypes. But I think everyone knows this, and so it's rarely open in my experience. I haven't drafted a blue-red deck in a long time.
Yeah, I had that sweet one where I had Sublime Epiphany plus Shipwreck Dowser, and we got to get a few people with it, with the combo of just copying Shipwreck Singer, picking up your Sublime Epiphany.
Small tangent. Speaking of blue decks, I played against a blue-red deck earlier, and I played against a few opponents today and yesterday who've been casting Wall of Omens. What's the card? The 1-drop blue 0/4.
Wall of...
got the skeleton guy on it.
Omen, maybe?
Wall of Runes.
Runes.
Wall of
Ruin.
0/4 defender. Enter the battlefield, scry 1. I don't know why people are playing this. It doesn't synergize with anything. It's just a waste of a card. Please don't.
Yeah, that was weird. I can't believe your opponent played 2.
Yeah, you just mulligan if you draw this card. Like, I don't know why.
Okay, but hear me out. What if you play the 3-mana 0/3 that gives all creatures +1/+0?
That's only if they're attacking.
Yeah, I know, but then what if is there a card that gets rid of Defender? No, I'm trying to think of how many hoops you can jump through. There isn't.
Yeah, that's why I don't know why they're playing it. There's none of those like defenders can attack damage equal to their toughness cards. It's just
actually not. Yeah, I don't know. It happens. People are don't do that though. Yeah, for sure. Please don't put those cards in your deck, even if I don't know. It feels like you want low creatures or something. That card is not remotely playable.
It's not. Scrying is not worth a useless 0/4. Anyway, speaking of 4 in a spot of the card where it matters, the red-green archetype is the 4 power or more. This is another recurring archetype from limited sets, really powered by things like Furious Rise and Garrick's Uprising. You're just trying to play. This is like the Onaki Ogre deck.
Because nobody's taking Onaki Ogres. I think this deck's actually good. So I've drafted it twice. The one time I punted, but even then we had a winning record. Stelly and I couldn't believe it. And then the other time I drafted, I actually rolled people over with this deck with just Onaki Ogres because no one takes them, and you just know you're going to have 4 power on.
Yeah, you'll get Onaki Ogres, you'll get Turret Ogres. The 5-mana 4/4 in green is pretty good here. Yeah, just because it's got 4 power and it enables all this stuff. And you get your card advantage from one of those 2 enchantments that I mentioned. And then, you just attack and your opponent, all your stuff is bigger or more powerful than your opponent's, and they have to start blocking, or you can race them.
There's not a lot of thought to this deck, trust me. Stelly and I played a bunch of games with it. You just heard stuff sideways. And the one pun was I think I misclicked or just missequenced and lost us something. But otherwise we just smashed.
He decided not to turn something when I should have. Decided to not turn something sideways, immediately lost.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But cards that are good here and not in many other archetypes, things like Ordinary Dilithsaur. If this thing's pretty consistently a 4-mana 4/4 because you have other creatures, that's quite good. 4-mana 4/4, that touches nuts. But most other decks I don't think can activate that consistently.
Yeah, also Furious Rise is like an insane card if you pull it off out of green-red. Yeah. Like if it sticks early, it's a huge problem.
Yeah, of course. And then with any green deck, Hunter's Edge is like some of the premium removal because it powers up or like sizes up your creatures to start triggering these other effects. It's not a fight. Like you just get
I was just gonna say it. It's because it's not a fight.
It just does the damage, so it's like primo removal.
Yeah, for sure. That deck's pretty straightforward. I think the red-white deck is also pretty straightforward. You're looking for cards like Alpine Hunt Master, and then you want to pick up some doggos. Igneous Cur is pretty good in the red-white deck, I found. You want to take things like Sure Strike in this deck, I think. I'm trying to think what
I think
else.
it's like a very 2-drop focused deck with combat tricks to allow them to trade up. Well, not trade up, but using your combat tricks to kill the opposing creatures because they're going to be forced into blocking. I think this is probably the best Bolt Hound deck just because you have such a wide array of creatures.
Yeah, I don't even know how I feel about Bolt Hound. I'm not even sure I like it, but it's fine. I think it's good. I just, it's hard to keep it alive. Yeah.
But
I think one of the best cards actually secretly in red-white aggro, if you're looking for it, if you're trying to go aggressive and trying to kill people, is actually Gale Swooper.
Oh, I love Gale Swooper. That card's nuts.
It's going to jump some of your creatures later that get brick walled and then also just be a flying threat on its own. And when you're playing aggro, you usually need that final push. So Gale Swooper is secretly one of the cards that you'll keep in, and you'll cut seemingly better cards in red-white because of that. And don't be concerned that you need to trade aggressively or anything. Red-white can go late. You can win late. You just have to draft smart.
Yeah, because you have some creatures that scale pretty well, like Igneous Cur. If you have a bunch of mana, will trade with anything. You can draw all the powerful red removal, the burn spells and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
To push through damage, and it's a deck that can, if you maybe hold on to something like a Bolt Hound, can surprise your opponents if they attack a bit too aggressively trying to end the game. You can just sneak through some damage.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we saw that on the Versus Series week when I played the red-white draft deck that I had drafted versus people. Yeah, I mean, just kill people out of nowhere.
Yeah,
red-white's quite strong for that. What else do we have here? Blue-white Flyers, which Cam and I already mentioned, we think is probably one of the stronger archetypes. It just seems easy to get a lot of the pieces for it that synergize really well together.
Yeah, just the fact that Flyers, flying archetypes, are usually pretty strong in any limited format because of the inherent evasion. You're usually, it's not uncommon that you're the only person in the game with flying creatures, so you just get to attack whenever you want. Mixed with the fact that things like Tide Skimmer is an incredibly good flying creature. And then what I think puts this deck over the top is Lofty Denial. It is such an efficient counterspell, just that you get rewarded just for playing your normal game plan. It allows you to sidestep the issues that sometimes these Flyers decks have, which is large, expensive creatures resolving that they either can't attack past or can't race. You just can counter them almost assuredly. So yeah, just Flyers and Lofty Denial is incredibly powerful. Roaming Ghostlight might be the most important card in this deck because if you are unable to counter a large late game creature, it resets it and it's basically a time walk in those turns. Plus, just as another 3 power in the air.
Yeah, Celestial Enforcer is another really, really important card in Blue-White Flyers, presuming that you have enough Flyers. And usually I'll even play a Concordia Pegasus or two. You're not really that stoked about them. But if you have a deck that has 1 or 2 Tide Skimmers, it doesn't feel as bad. It can play defense, but it also feels good with Celestial Enforcers, which you can usually pick up. Are some of the key cards. You want things like Swift Response to be able to deal with the bigger creatures on the ground. Usually you can defend, and you'll get overrun by things like Colossal Dreadmaw, so just try and save your Swift Responses for those moments. The other thing is Blue-White, because of Lofty Denials, can play a pretty tricky game plan, and you can really use a combination of things like Lofty Denial, Feat of Resistance, and Swift Response, and 4 to 6 mana to really sort of bait opponents into using combat tricks, because as we've mentioned previously, combat tricks are actually okay in this format. Titanic Growth's pretty strong. A lot of different tricks are pretty good. But the blue-white deck usually has good answers, and you can play a really tricky game and get a lot of people with a lot of valuable 2-for-1s with the blue-white deck, because it's hard for them to know what you're dealing with when you leave a creature back or something on defense, and you have a Feat of Resistance, a Swift Response, and a Lofty Denial in your hand in 4 mana. You open up and unlock a lot of potential with the Blue-White Flyers deck to get people.
Yeah.
So
And,
that's how you
when
should think about playing it, in my experience.
Yeah, and when you mentioned things like Concordia Pegasus, or I mean, Skyscanner makes the cut in a lot of decks, but I think it is best in blue-white flyers. These creatures are kind of small, which is usually their downside, and why Concordia Pegasus doesn't usually make the cut. But outside of enabling flyer synergies, this deck also takes as many Basri's Acolytes as it can get, and Basri's Acolyte putting counters on flying creatures gives you a relatively quick clock that will just close out games.
Yeah, exactly. The best Flyers deck I've ever drafted had 2 Celestial Enforcers, 2 Basri's Acolytes, and then all Flyers.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And and triple Lofty Denial. Yeah, it was really good. And double Swift Response. Yeah, it was absurd. My deck was bananas. I won very easily. Many games. But yeah, and a lot of it is just a combination of exactly those cards. So when you're in blue-white, that's what you're aiming for, yeah.
Yeah, another card that's good in blue-white and in blue-red. It's not often, like, you don't take it aggressively, but you're not unhappy if it ends up in your deck, is something like Rousing Reed. You can give a creature flying to synergize with your flying things. I mean, just the evasion is strong, but also it's not irrelevant filtering. I've lost games because my blue opponent has cast Rousing Reeds, not because it pushes a bunch of damage, but because they discarded the extra lands, and I had the extra lands stuck in my hand. And so Rousing Reed, I think, is a nice pickup for most decks.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it's really good. I didn't even think about how good it was in blue-white as well. It's quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about this is a weird one. And everyone knows blue-green is a weird one. Blue-green is the weird kid.
Yeah, blue-green kind of just, I mean, it's like a mix of ramp and flyers. Like, I've seen blue-green decks play like Mistral Singers and give them prowess by casting Cultivates and kill me. Sometimes they like put Rousing Reed on like a Colossal Dreadmaw and they attack you for 7 in the air. Like, other times they just ramp very quickly to Warden of the Woods, which we talked about as this mythic uncommon, or even just Spined Megalodons, and they just get to bigger things faster and attack you.
Yeah. They can even play a tempo game with like Ghostlight and Rewind. They can do a bunch. Rewind is a card we didn't really mention, by the way, that goes in all of the blue decks we've talked about.
Yeah, Rewind is quite good. Yeah. Blue-green, I think, is the Llanowar Visionary deck. It just triggers all of its cards that care about drawing. It is ramp. I mean, it's good in any green deck, but it feels like it's really at home in blue-green.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. That's its dream home. Yeah. You'll take any of the big, Tolarian octopuses and megalodons, blue-green. But you do want to play a tempo game, I think, early to sort of get ahead with blue-green, because you can't just rely on big fatties. I think that's one of the mistakes people make, is they don't draw the right combination of ramp and threats. You still need to consider how you're going to survive the tempo game. So you'll also really prioritize things like Ghostlights.
Mm-hmm.
And even play things like unsubstantiate. And the reason for this, when you're drafting something like blue-green, is you just need to buy time to resolve, your, Warden of the Woods, your Spine Megalodons, these cards that people just literally can't interact with and just die once they resolve. You just need to keep the board at parity or ahead, or even around there, until you can resolve those, and then you're good.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last one we've sort of been talking about throughout, it's white-green. I think it's one of the more obvious and one of the stronger. It's definitely up there. I think it's tied for strength in my mind with blue-white and blue-red, especially the good versions of white-green. This is just the counters deck. I think you want to play this one pretty aggressively. Try and avoid, like, you can include 6-drops, but I think it's best when it's full of 2s and 3s, so that you have targets for Basri's Acolytes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, you're trying to optimize Basri's Acolytes. I really like Drowsy Tyrannodon in this archetype, because you can use Pride Malkin or Basri's Acolyte to just turn it into a 4/4 that self-enables.
Also, this is an insane Feat of Resistance deck. Feat of Resistance is just actually an S tier card in this format, by the way. But
yeah, Feat is really good.
Yeah, Feat is insane, and then in this deck in particular, it's an absolute bomb. Yeah, just even turning on your Pteranodon. This is a deck where Short Sword's actually not bad because of even the Dino.
Yeah, that's another good combo. If you have the dinos around, Short Sword is quite good. Short Sword also okay in blue-white, just because putting it on a flyer is nice.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, white-green, I think if you focus on like smaller creatures, being able to curve out and just like grow your creatures that you've already committed to the board, you don't need as much removal as you think you might. Like that 3-0 that I finally got today, I was worried it didn't have enough removal. I had like one Hunter's Edge, but I just made huge creatures and attacked, and they had to block, and that was removal.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes for the deck. And you get cards like Tempered Veteran usually because no one else takes them.
And Tempered Veteran, very, very good in that archetype.
Yeah, and you can pick up all these really late counter-specific cards that are really, really good. So if you hit the piece, but to get the deck to really shine, you do need things like Conclave Mentor, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's when it's going to be at its absolute best. Other sort of just general impressions about the format. I'm always hesitant to play combat tricks because I'm scared of getting blown out, but they're actually fine in this format. Things like Sure Strike, Titanic Growth are quite good. Feat of Resistance is a protection spell that's also a combat trick. It's just S tier. Ranger's Guile is also up there as being amazing.
I think Ranger's Guile is really good. I've been blown out by it so many times, and I even try and play around it, and it just still gets you quite a bit. It's very good. I've been thoroughly impressed by it. Yeah, definitely agree on that one.
Mm-hmm.
What else was there? There's another card I was impressed by that I wasn't sure about. Oh yeah, how good was Gellick Ascension? I had it in another deck again today, and it was also unreal.
Yeah, that card is much more flexible than I expected it to be. Like giving your opponent a 4/4 isn't ideal, but sometimes it can blow them out if they've got to try to invest a bunch of cards onto one permanent. But usually just like upgrading a small creature that you have around into a 4/4 is...
So I've never cast it on one of my opponent's creatures, but I've used it to counter essentially quote unquote a removal spell or something along those lines, or upgrade into a 4/4 and a surprise combat something. And it's always been good. It card should be bad. I don't understand what's happening.
I mean, I just think the stats on a 4/4 is, in particular, a 4/4 flyer is oftentimes huge in this format. Like outside of a green-white deck that's run away with the game or a blue-green deck that's cast its huge creatures, a 4/4 is bigger than everything on the board.
Yeah, true.
Which is again why Tyrannodon is so good. Like,
and if it countered a removal spell, that just seems unbelievable. Yeah, and I guess I did do that a lot, and it's 2 mana, and you can set it up.
Yeah, like if you're countering a removal spell, it's kind of like they killed your creature and you just got to play a 2 mana 4/4 flyer, which is an insane rate.
Yeah, it's unreal.
The other thing,
the card's probably really bad. I was just experimenting with it. I'm just going to tell people that like you got to jump through too many hoops, and it's probably not worth it. But I don't know. It was like surprisingly good when I tried it. But I think in principle, this is a card you should avoid. I was just surprised how in this format it was useful in the last times I have tried it.
I think I've mostly mentioned the cards that I've been impressed with. Obviously, there's a bunch of commons and uncommons that we haven't mentioned that are all fine. And as you play games in the format, you'll sort of get a sense for all of them.
Okay, a rare I thought would be bad, but was really good, was Idol of Endurance. I thought it would be really bad in Limited. That card's super good in Limited.
Yeah.
I thought it would be bad. That's a rare. On paper, as a rare, I'd be like, yeah, this card's just unplayable in Limited, but it was
a ton of staying power late game, yeah.
Yeah, I had it in that red-white deck, and so I just kept winning late games and just playing card. You saw it, and just grinding through people, And yeah, it's surprisingly good, actually. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, and it really shines in red-white, where you ideally have a bunch of 2s and 3s that your opponent has to trade with early, or like you have an Igneous Cur that traded with something, and you get to bring it back and trade with something again, or et cetera, et cetera. So on the other axis of the slogan of rarity disparity, there's not many, but a few rares and mythics that I took thinking they might be all right, which I was really unimpressed with, and I think are traps in this format. The first one being Discontinuity. I thought, if you have a slower blue deck, it could just be a counterspell. It's also a time it's also a time walk. Or like
come on, you couldn't have possibly thought this was playable.
What? It's like Nexus. Your opponent just skips their turn. That's insane.
That card's so bad, but like I get the appeal. You got to try it.
Yeah, so I tried it. It's really slow. Just play Rewind instead.
Well, yeah, Rewind actually does something. Yeah,
might be good. Was Kervek, the Spiteful. Other creatures get -1/-1, and he's a 3/2. And even the game where my opponent couldn't cast Goblin Wizardry because they would just die, and it did kill 2 Goblin Wizardry tokens, I found that, it was in a green-black deck, which meant that it discouraged me from achieving the 4 power or greater that a lot of my cards needed. And if it's not in a green-black deck, like most of the black-blue creatures don't have that much power to begin with, and that it's a symmetric effect means that like it's not really benefiting or hurting you. You just play a normal game with like a vanilla 4 mana 3/2 that you played. So like wasn't super impressed. And it cuts off a lot of the cards that black wants to play. Like your Fetid Imp doesn't do anything because it has no power. You can't play Masked Blackguard because it will die. I think it's too much of a liability. And in white black, there's a bunch of 1 power or 1 toughness things that you might want to play as well that it just doesn't let you play. Speaking of Speaker of the Heavens, I thought maybe I could get a bunch of 4/4s out of it, but the fact that your opponent attacks you means that that's not going to happen.
That card's garbage, yeah. I've never put that card in my deck, yeah.
And another card that I've seen from my opponents twice and that I tried to play once was Gadrak the Crown Scourge, which was basically a 5/4 defender.
I mean, that's not bad for 3 mana with flying, though. I think that card's actually fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one, unclear. I probably won't take it again. Adam said it was fine, so maybe you guys can let me know what your experiences with it are. But in my experience, it gave the opponent so much time to find a way to answer it or to craft a game plan around it. And it made the person with Gadrak play really weird, trying to get stuff to die, like maybe making attacks they shouldn't make just to try and get treasures.
Yeah, that's true too.
And there's not many like good artifacts otherwise. Like you're not going to play Prismite to try and turn this thing on. Maybe you'll play Short Sword.
Okay, you can't put that card in your deck. That's like, for people listening, okay, there are certain cards, to wrap this up, there are just certain cards you can't put in your deck, okay? One of them is Wall of Runes. One of them is Walking Corpse.
Yeah, Walking Corpse sucks.
And one of the others is
Prismite.
What were we just saying? Sorry. Yeah, Prismite. Yeah, you these cards just can't go in your deck. Obviously, like Tormod's Crypt and everything too, but like Walking Corpse and stuff is just not acceptable in this format at the power level it is. It's just a 2 mana 2/2. You can't play that in your
not
deck.
good enough. There's so many 2/3s. A 2/2 just loses. Like even Alpine Watchdog is sometimes not great. Like the fact that it has vigilance and the fact that you can put counters on it helps, and that it synergizes with like Alpine Houndmaster. But even that is like a quick cut if you don't have some way to get it through, or you really need a 2-drop.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this episode, like we probably could have gone on I could go on forever about this format. I think it's actually really deep and there's a lot going on.
Yeah, like
maybe
we can a ton of nuance that we can't fit into an episode, but
maybe we can
overview.
Yeah, just a general guide. And if you have more specific questions, feel free to shoot us a message on Discord or wherever else. And I'm always happy to talk about Limited. Yeah.
All right, cool. On that note, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. Don't forget, this Saturday, July 18th, noon Eastern, winner takes all event, DWC Take Our Money. We'll be playing bounty prizes if you defeat us during the tournament. And it's a free event, so come battle MTG Melee. It's going to be a lot of fun. However you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, any podcast app, leave a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. Everything helps, keeps this thing growing and bringing it to new listeners. Thank you for listening. Catch you next week.
Later.
See ya.